I identify as biromantic asexual. That means that while I don't feel sexual attraction, I do feel romantic attraction for multiple genders. Sexual attraction and romantic attraction often come hand in hand, but not always. Asexual will not always mean aromantic, and vice versa. Now, when I came out to my mom, I had to take some time to explain the difference between sexual attraction and sex drive, which was definitely not the most comfortable conversation because really, who wants to explain to their parents about their own sexual preferences, even if it is a lack of them? Also, because it involved explaining that just because someone doesn't feel sexual desire, that doesn't mean they don't desire sex. Yeah, freaking awkward. But the point I'm trying to make is that asexuality doesn't come automatically with celibacy or sex repulsion. It can, but not always. To be honest, I'm not quite sure how to explain the concept of wanting or enjoying sex without feeling sexual attraction. To me, they're different things, and it makes sense. I mean, there are plenty of people who do feel sexual attraction and don't partake in sex. They might abstain due to certain personal views or due to an inability on their own part. In connection to my point, however, it might be because they don't have a very active sex drive or just genuinely don't enjoy the act of sex. Feeling that way doesn't mean that they're asexual, it just means that they have certain preferences. And being asexual doesn't automatically mean that one doesn't have a libido. But given the extremely limited amount of discussion one tends to hear on the matter, it's really not that surprising that it isn't better understood.
I don't know too much, really. Just that it's the lack of sexual attraction.
Asexuality is when you aren't attracted to any kind of gender. It's just like, hey, I don't want to have sex.
It's a way that someone is, and it means that they don't feel sexually attracted to people.
Asexuality, as far as I understand it, is when an individual is not sexually attracted to one gender or sex than the other. They're just, like, not sexual. They have an absence of sexuality.
The internet, mostly, just Tumblr and stuff.
I'm gonna say probably the internet.
I honestly do not know. Probably the internet. It's always the internet.
I think I heard about it in high school, but just talking about sexuality with, like, peers. I don't think I would learn about it from a teacher formally.
Yeah, no, barely learned about heterosexuality, to be honest.
I don't think I have.
Not that I can think of.
Anytime I looked up prominent asexual figures in accordance with this project, I got so many that just said, well, they were celibate, or they were believed to have never have been in a relationship. And I mean, I guess for historical figures, that makes sense. I mean, it's still not exactly a household term, so it's not surprising that way back when it wasn't really used. But the fact that there aren't really any confirmed prominent asexuals now is super frustrating. In literature, too. I mean, I read so much. My mom's a librarian, but I'm pretty sure I've never seen an asexual main character. Or even an asexual side character. I looked up lists of books with asexual characters for this project. Do you want to know what one of them had as a description? Books with characters that identify as asexual, or characters that could be read as asexual. Also, books that mention asexuality. We are talking bare minimum of effort here, and even with those incredibly loose guidelines, there are less than 50 books on that list. To be fair, it was the YA list, and the list of books for adults is longer, as well as saying that they guarantee that the characters are confirmed as asexual. But when you go down and read the comments, they're all debating whether the character ever came out as asexual, whether it's confirmed, how big a role the character had in just the book, or fourth, and just really the greatest, talking about how later on in the book, the character's asexuality was undermined because, oh, they weren't actually asexual, they were just waiting for the right person, or it was only due to certain circumstances. They weren't asexual. It was all in their mind. It was just a brain thing. Which sucks. I mean, I grew up surrounded by books. Fictional characters are who I identified with, and I just wish that some of them could have connected with me on this one other level, or helped me understand it. I mean, admittedly, I'm probably in the best situation to be questioning myself on this. I do tend to spend a majority of my time on the internet where discussion is far more plentiful. Still, I don't think I ever even heard the phrase asexual in terms of a human sexuality until I entered high school. And even then, I'm almost positive I happened upon it online. I didn't hear it from a school teacher, unless we're counting science and the term asexual reproduction, which, no. Just, no. even once I did know what it meant, I didn't really think of it in terms of myself. I mean, admittedly, that is kind of my fault. I brought it up to one of my friends once, and she said something along the lines of, you couldn't be, you aren't repulsed by sex. I mean, it made sense to me at the time. I didn't really feel a need to push it, and I have spent years being the straight friend in my friend group. I think I was kind of unsure if I wanted to change that or not. Now, let me make this perfectly clear. I had and have no problem with anyone's sexuality. I think people should be able to identify in any way that makes them feel comfortable, even if that way is a lack of an identification. And I knew my parents would accept me no matter what I decided on the matter. But there is a big difference between being tolerant and accepting of others and applying such tolerance to yourself. I didn't really begin to question myself until one day around the end of my junior year of high school. Class seemed really boring, so it was kind of unconsciously decided that we'd talk about most teenagers' favorite topic of conversation: sex. And when the question of which person I would sleep with got to me, I realized I didn't have anyone. There was no one in the classroom I would have sex with, which seemed normal to me, except for the fact that everyone else had an answer, one that they didn't seem to think much about. And then one of them said something that smacked me in the face. No celebrities, Pearl. Which, haha, Pearl's such a fangirl, she's probably thinking about hot actors. I got the joke. I was just suddenly realizing it didn't apply. I wasn't thinking about actors like that. I wasn't thinking about my classmates like that. I wasn't thinking about anyone like that, and I never had. Now, in the middle of class isn't the greatest place for foundation blocks of hue are to start cracking. So while inside this was happening, the outside had to stay far more collected. I spent a couple months just thinking to myself before I even brought up the concept to my best friend. Not even coming out, just discussing the fact that I might identify as such. And after I got over my momentary hesitation over putting out into the world a concept about myself that I was still kind of unsure about, it was the best option for me. Sharing what I was thinking with another person gave me a chance to talk out my confusion and make my feelings seem more valid. I settled myself in the idea that my sexual identity might change or not be valid in some people's eyes, but that it felt right to me, and it still feels right some months later, so I'm becoming comfortable in my own identity. I'm ready to make myself known and to try and make sure that other people know that asexuality exists. Just because it's not talked about much doesn't mean it's not valid or important. And I think that's what I really needed to hear for a while. So here's me, making my own video, putting down in words that it's okay, and you're valid.